So the first budget of Modi 3.0 has been unveiled, and as was expected, there is a lot of politics behind each and every sentence which was uttered by the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman today. With me, well-known journalist, founder, editor of Editor G, someone who tracks the economy very, very closely, Vikram Chandra, joining us now. Great to have you with us today, Vikram on Spirals.
Hey, Bhupen, always great to be with you. Always good to be
Always fun.
talking to you. And you're right, the so many of the themes that you and I must have encountered on the election trail did find some resonance and some bearing on what was actually heard today at the budget.
So one thing which I found very, very interesting, for the last 10 years, the BJP refused to acknowledge this factor that there was a problem of creation of jobs. How do you respond to what we have seen today, where from an employer-employee relationship to internships to stipends, this constructive intervention which is being shown by the government, do we look at this as a response to joblessness, which was a reality during the last 10 years?
No, I look, the fact that unemployment has been a problem is something that's been clear. You just have to just go talk to anybody. They'll tell you, go into the rural Indias, they'll tell you, go to small cities, they'll tell you, go to big cities, they'll tell you. Unemployment is a problem at a time when India is a booming economy growing at 7-8%. The fact that unemployment is there is obviously an issue. I think this election really underlined for the BJP and for the government the extent to which unemployment is a political problem, because as you must have heard also, the number of people who said this is the single issue on which we're going to vote. So this is not something that you can say, oh, well, we'll fix eventually, we trickle down, and as the economy grows and we do X, Y, Z, and employment will happen. What you heard today was the fact that unemployment is put at the center stage, the fact that from production linked incentives, you're not talking about employment linked incentives. The extent to which these policies will actually impact unemployment is, of course, something which is a bit up in the air. You do need growth for that. To that extent, it's been correct. You need reforms, you need other things. But clearly, they've acknowledged that it's the biggest problem.
Yeah, that's the point I was getting at. Because economists and data analysts have looked at this question of whether there was sufficient employment which is being generated in India in multiple ways. There are those, the likes of Surjit Balla, who believe that there was a problem in data collection. When the government says that a sum of 3,000 rupees per month will be given as EPFO assistance, how do you read this? Is it an attempt somewhere to get the number story also right, that maybe there were jobs which are being created, but the story was not being captured in absolute hard numbers? Is that the way to look at it, Vikram?
So I think that's an interesting point you make, right? Because as EPFO numbers go up, so at least look, there's that internship program which actually probably does help in driving employment. First month salary or 1 month salary for first-time employees, that's interesting. But clearly, the sort of CSR and other the steps that are being done to start boosting EPFO numbers means that officially the number of people who are in employment, that number starts to trend up. So that's good. That will help with the data. But in actual fact, I think if you're wanting to make a difference to the problem of unemployment on the ground, then obviously a lot more things will have to be done. How do you encourage people to get trained in to move into jobs? What are you going to do with the manufacturing sector? And if you read the economic survey yesterday, Bhupen, it was clear that they're talking about the fact that there is another tsunami that is about to hit, which is the story of employment in India, the story of the Indian economy itself, which is services and what's happening out there. The fact that AI is coming, the fact that AI is going to have a very massive impact on employment in sector after sector, services areas, possibly white collar jobs. That's a storm that I think we have to start preparing for right from now.
And do you think this budget putting in the building blocks for creating that response to deal with the kind of tsunami you're speaking about?
Not entirely. I think there are steps in that direction, but I think a lot more work will have to be done. I'm glad that they've taken note of the problem. I'm glad they're talking about it. There was obviously other politics also, which was there in the budget. I mean, obviously, the attention that was paid to Bihar and to Andhra Pradesh was obvious, and striking from new capitals to highways in Bihar, to flood relief in Bihar, to tourism in Bihar, you heard it all. Interestingly, I'm sure there's one anomaly that must have caught your attention also in all that talk about Bihar and about Andhra Pradesh, which would have made the JDU and TDP somewhat happy, were you also as surprised as I was that there was really very little mention of either Haryana or, more importantly, Maharashtra?
Well, I think what will happen is that maybe as you go deeper in the election territory, Vikram, who knows? I was told 15th of August is another milestone day, which is awaiting us, and perhaps there could be another big statement, another, at least a declaration of some intent which could be done. But just to come back to this point, the other big social media chatter that I picked up, Vikram, is this question of asset indexation.
Mm.
Many diehard supporters of the BJP are saying that this is going to kill the real estate sector if you remove the question of indexation. How do you read this move?
Okay, so let me just spend a couple of minutes disaggregating it for you,
Please.
because I've been obviously looking
Please.
at it in great length for the last 2, 3 hours. Number
Hmm.
one, on the equity side, right? On the equity side, there's good news and there's bad news. For listed equity, it's gone from 10 to 12.5%, which is, I mean, okay, you can say it's 2.5%, it's actually 25% in real terms. So that's one issue. That's listed equity, right? And also you've got STT. For
Hmm.
startups and for unlisted equity, actually, there's good news, although you're doing away with indexation, but there's potentially good news because for the first time, startups and others such unlisted equity will be treated at par with listed equity, which is something the startup sector has been asking for a long time. When you come to real estate, the honest argument, the fact is it going to help or is it going to hurt? The answer is going to be somewhat case by case. Because remember, two things have happened. We just heard the finance secretary saying, why is everyone cribbing? We've actually brought the rate down from 20% to 12.5%. And that's perfectly true. You have brought the rate down from 20% to
But you've
12.5%.
taken the indexation away.
But you've taken away indexation. So the answer is going to be, are you hit or are you helped? It really depends on a multitude of factors. So for example, let's say you acquired the property at 10 lakh rupees and now you're selling it at 1 crore. That's the
Hmm.
gain that you have. Indexation wise, that 10 would have only gone up to maybe 20 or 25. So you've got a big capital gains. And therefore, the fact that you're paying less, you're only paying 12.5 and not 20%, you could actually be a beneficiary if that happens.
Hmm.
In other set of circumstances, let's say you bought a property just a few years ago for like whatever, 2 crore
Hmm.
rupees and you're selling it today for 4 crore rupees, that's when it's going to hurt you because that indexation has gone. So it depends. The answer is every single transaction will have to say some people will be benefited, some people will be hurt.
I think specifically in the space of real estate, that's where maximum number of questions are being subjected towards us as well. And there are many CAs who are calling us and asking that, if you'd bought a property, let's say worth 100 rupees post 2001, earlier you would have paid a tax of 20% post indexation.
Yeah.
Now you've taken the indexation away and you're going to pay 12.5%. In real terms, you'll end up paying almost double post the rule of indexation than what you would have done earlier. And therefore, a lot of maybe middle class, second generation, or third generation citizens who may have benefited or maybe may have been
And
looking to
that's
benefit from
particularly
whatever
true, I
investment that
guess,
was
when you're
done by
looking at cases
the new
where the
generation.
property has been held for a long time, because then the benefit of indexation is really building up. Look, I think the point I'm trying to make is that it is something that will have to be looked on a case by case basis, right? I mean,
Hmm.
supposing there's somebody who bought a property not 20 years ago, let's say there's somebody who bought a property 2 years ago and it suddenly doubled in value. Now
Hmm.
you've only got 2 years of indexation, so that's what you're losing, but you're gaining from the drop of 20% to 12.5%. So that math will have to be done in every case. There are some people, I think what you're saying is right. A lot of people, especially people sitting on legacy property, will end
Right.
up taking a hit because of that removal of indexation. But there will be a section, maybe a smaller section, but there will be a section of people who could potentially benefit also.
Sure. Okay. Last question then, Vikram. You would have also looked very closely at the income tax slabs. The one big criticism against successive governments has been that middle classes somehow, when it comes to budget day, they just don't seem to have any voice. How do you look at the rationalization which has been done today?
You know, I don't know if you saw the economic survey yesterday, and that's where I think there's a missed opportunity. The economic survey had this really poetic paragraph talking about how you must remove all compliance, remove all burden, give up your power, trust the citizens. And that's something which you keep on hearing every successive government saying. When it comes to taxation, there are two aspects of it. One is the tax rates itself. And I think what the middle class and people, remember you soon hit the 30% slab in India at fairly low levels by global standards, which is fair enough. But you are paying
Hmm.
30, 35, 40%. One set of issues that people has is with the taxation itself. They say, oh, we're paying so many taxes, and look at the services we're getting; they're not commensurate. Roads are getting flooded and X, Y, Z. So that's one point of the argument. You may or may not be sympathetic to that. Look, people pay taxes everywhere, and it's not that India is taxing people at 60 to 70%. I think
Right.
the other area which you keep on hearing the government saying we want to move in the direction of is easing compliance, reducing the burden, not harassing people, not having tax terrorism, not having tax torture.
Hmm.
To be fair to Nirmala Sitharaman, she's often tried to do things about that. And again, in today's budget, we heard certain noises about that. But I really believe that we have to, when it comes to taxation, I'm really going to be sitting and waiting for this new tax code. Let's see what's in the new tax code, because hopefully that changes the paradigm. Hopefully, there's a certain, you have moderate taxations, not crazy taxation, moderate taxation, very easy to comply, an atmosphere of trust where you by and large are trusting the taxpayers and they're not getting dragged, they're not being penalized because they pay taxes. Look, I'm sure
Hmm.
you've encountered this from many people. You ever
Sure.
go down to any go down to I talk to 20 people out there and say, "Bhai, aap log kyun black money rakhte hain? Why aren't you paying taxes?" A small
All right.
percentage of them will say we don't pay taxes because we want to save that 10% or 20%. A lot more
Hmm.
people will tell you we don't want to do it because we don't want the headache of having to deal with tax inspectors and this and that, and people coming and asking questions and somebody coming in asking for bribes. That's the entire. If Nirmala Sitharaman says we've got to broaden the tax net, which you need to, those are the people you've got to get inside. And ease of compliance, ease of paying your taxes, a reduction in harassment. That's how that particular thing happens. And by the way, she has seen what the benefits of that have been over the last few years. If you look at the rise that you're seeing of tax buoyancy, it's because we have
Hmm.
been moving in that step. It's becoming a bit easier, there's less harassment. And so people are coming and paying more taxes. That's really the
Okay.
important direction now that I hope we should see.
Okay, Vikram. Great pleasure speaking to you. Thanks so much for joining us and
Always,
making some sense of all the words uttered by
you're
Nirmala
finally
Sitharaman.
saying that I made some sense after all these years.
Some sense today. I must be
Finally,
honest.
after all these years. Thank you.
Finance ministers over the years, this budget speeches have gone longer and longer and longer, and somehow I always find that the real meat is in a few sentences. That's why I wanted to have this conversation with you. Thanks so much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.